We're going to talk in this next segment about what counts as being food and what counts as not being food. This brings us into all kinds of complex conversations that you and I have with the other organic matter that populates our universe, including, like our friend here, this little puppy dog. He's not supposed to be getting into that restaurant. Why should the dog be mixing up in, of course the dog should be kept out of a restaurant. That's where we eat food, and we want to be very cautious about where the boundary between food and things that aren't food gets drawn. We want to be very cautious about that as human beings. Now, for our episode, as we saw in the final culminating one in our adventures, we have this question about food crimes. The Odysseus's men are punished severely. They're supposed to just go ahead and accept the idea that they're going to starve to death when all of this food that is fully authorized by their cultural norms is sitting right in front of them, glistening, waiting for them to eat it. And we're supposed to just say, or let's just say Homer goes ahead and just says, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe they did that, it's awful," and they get blotted out from the face of the earth. Their own reckless ways, remember, it's queued up for us at the very beginning of the epic, causes Odysseus' men to cross the line and eat the cattle of the sun. Now, on the one hand, we might think this seems like an absolutely ruthless kind of divinity that would punish them so awfully for just doing what normal people would do, normal Greeks would do, eating some flesh of this animal cows, which the Greeks said was completely authorized to eat. Well, it's not quite like that. We mentioned at the end of our last lecture, the point here is that our god, Helios, has declared that these cows be not food. In taking them away from the category of authorized protein to eat, what the god has done is remove them from the normal kinds of things that you and I can go ahead and sink our teeth into and enjoy. Now, when we get to this rule about what counts as being food and what is not food, we enter into a very interesting kind of conversation with our fellow human beings. Some of us will look at something like this little creature in front of us and say to ourselves, "Oh my goodness, there's no way that that could properly count as food for me. Certainly not. There's no way I could eat this insect, this cricket with many legs, and it's probably crunchy, and what do you do with it anyway?" It just seems, for some of us, to provoke a kind of nasty response that would even be a disgust response, where we would be absolutely repulsed by the idea of eating this thing. Then we might get into another cultural dimension where we would say, "Oh, look at this little creature," and there'll be some people that say, "Well, actually, this is perfectly fine. This is food, and it's perfectly happy and healthy, and it's the kind of thing you would serve guests to make them feel good." Other people will look at this exact same creature and say to themselves, no, there's no way. The disgust response will be provoked, even at a creature that other people think is just fine to eat. Then we'll run into this figure here, who dressed up as he is in the garb that the Greeks like to give to the sacrificial animal that they're giving to the gods. The gods like to eat it, so we Greeks know that this is normal authorized food. There will be some other cultures out there, contemporary ones and other past ones, that would look at this source of food and say to themselves, "Ugh, it provokes a disgust response. It can't count as food. It's on the other side of that normal everyday dividing line between what's food and what's not food." Others will see something like this and look at it and say, "Well, maybe it's not the most tempting food, but I could surely eat it and it would sustain me for a meal." Others would be ravenous for this kind of a thing. Still others would look at it and say, "No, look at that. It's a violation, this particular cheeseburger. You're bringing together kinds of foods that ought never to be brought together." And so a disgust response is provoked. Now, the line between what counts as normal authorized food, things that are okay to eat, and food that is, or potential food, things you could chew up and swallow but that don't count as food, that line is exceedingly, exceedingly clear for most of us. In its clarity, most of us think that it's absolutely natural. But when we look at the cultural differences in a historical context as well as even in a contemporary context, it's obvious that this line, despite how clear it is not natural. it's culturally informed, culturally determined. Our culture tells us what the line is between what's food and what's not food. Now, this line then, this culturally constructed line, I'm drawing it right down the middle. I hope I'm on the not food side. Over here is food, and over here is, let's say for sure, not food. So this line down the middle, culturally constructed as it is, just because it's culturally constructed doesn't mean therefore it's irrelevant. Well, gosh, it's extremely relevant. It's exceedingly relevant for all of us. It's one of the basic building blocks of how we decide we're going to associate with people. Do they eat the same kind of a food that I do? And if they don't eat a food that I do, and we see them on the other side of this food line, we say to ourselves, oh my goodness, that's so strange. And in fact, we may have a kind of disgust response watching the other people eat this food that's not authorized in our cultural categories. That disgust response is non-negotiable. So the line between what's food and what's not food is culturally determined, number one, and number two, it's also non-negotiable. When someone is entering into that kind of disgust response, oh my God, you're eating something that doesn't count as food, it's not as though you can just kind of talk them out of it and say, oh, wait a minute, it's a perfectly clean protein source. You deep fry anything for long enough and it becomes clean. You're going to be okay. It's been prepared very carefully, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You can't just get talked out of whatever disgust response you have. The point is that there's a strong, firm line between what's food and what's not food. Now, at the far end of the category of things that count as being not food, I've already alluded to it in drawing my line where I did, food on this side, not food over here. At the far end of the not food is, that's right, you and me. We count as not food for you and I. And mostly, I'm not going to say it's absolutely universally true, but mostly it's true, and by mostly, very widely is it true, that eating other human beings is considered to be an awful food crime. And it's absolutely the case for the Greeks. The idea of humans eating other humans, that's just the worst. The idea of monsters eating other humans, the idea of any of human beings entering into the food chain, we are talking about food crimes when we talk about human beings entering into the food chain. And if other humans are the people responsible for doing the metabolizing, then it gets even worse. So crossing that line between what counts as food and not food provokes a disgust response. That's not negotiable, just happens. It also flirts with, doesn't always cross the line of, but flirts with that most extreme of food crimes, which we would put into the category of cannibalism. Eating something that's not authorized as food gets us already thinking down that path. So, now, for Odysseus and his men to transgress this line and go ahead and eat something that they already know, or God has declared, counts as being not food, is a much more serious thing than just satisfying their hunger because they happen to have got into a bad spot in their journey. No, they have crossed a food crime. Now, when they've done that and entered into taking it upon themselves to metabolize something they ought not to be metabolizing, they've committed an awful crime indeed, and therefore the God is going to have it out and punish them with utter severity.